Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:06. It's Monday morning in your nation's capital, and it's O'Connor and Company with me, Larry O'Connor, and she, Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Hey, thanks for carrying the load here while I was gone over the last 2 weeks. A long-awaited vacation that was hard to enjoy with all the news stories that were going on.
But I know. It's always hard to unwind. We really missed you. We had fun with Andrew and Joe Concha, but we really missed you. Glad you're back.
I appreciate you and Patrice and Mercedes and, of course, Joe and Andrew as well. And always good to know when I go on vacation that the show is in good hands. And I knew that there was going to be a very busy news cycle while I was gone, but I had no idea we were going to get hit with all the things we were hit with. But we got you covered now, picking up where we left off. Coming up at 7:35, Trevor Maddich on the Commanders' win yesterday. 8:05, Susan Crabtree. She's the go-to journalist on all things Secret Service. And then at 8:35, Ian Pryor, America First Legal. And right now, as we always do at this time on a Monday, we are proud to bring on Joe DeGeneva, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Welcome back, Larry.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here. Where to begin? First, I'd love for your instant reaction to yet another assassination attempt against Donald Trump yesterday at the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. This is the second attempt in just 2 months.
Well, as I've said repeatedly, Larry, to you and Julie, when you have the President of the United States, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hakeem Jeffries, say that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, demonize him, and have those words fall on the ears of unstable people, you get 2 assassination attempts. The trail of responsibility for this second attempt on Donald Trump lies at the feet of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hakeem Jeffries, and Charles Schumer. It's time for people not to be nice about this anymore and stop talking about the assailants themselves. These are unstable people who've decided they want to change an election with a bullet. In our democracy, you don't change an election with a bullet. You go to the ballot box. But Joe Biden and his cohorts are encouraging violence. This is despicable. This is unbelievable that they continue to do this. And when you have things like the Vindman family doing exactly that by encouraging this type of conversation, this is what you get. I pray to God that Trump wins, that the Republicans take the House and the Senate, and they begin to deal with this and these people who are responsible for this.
Joe, I appreciate all of that, and it is remarkable that right up until the assassination attempt yesterday, the media narrative was that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump were responsible for alleged bomb threats at a hospital in Springfield, Ohio, because they raised the trauma that the residents of that city are dealing with because of 20,000 Haitians that have been just transplanted there. There's no evidence, of course, to suggest that they had anything to do with those bomb threats or that those who perpetrated the bomb threats allegedly were connected to it. But you're right to obviously draw connections to this person's rhetoric and the fact that the Democrats continue to use this volatile language saying that Donald Trump is a threat to our very existence as a nation, a national security threat, and must be stopped. What do they think they're doing when they say things like that? They don't say we have to defeat him in November. They say he must be stopped at all costs.
No, they are purposely encouraging violence. It is time for people to stop being nice to the Biden ticket, the Harris ticket, and all these people, the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. When Chuck Schumer goes to the steps of the Supreme Court and says you will reap the whirlwind, you will not know what hit you, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, those are threats. Those are direct threats. Those are encouragements to people to do violence. And by the way, this particular attempted shooter of President Trump, this guy, Routh, R-O-U-T-H, he posted that Trump was a threat to democracy.
Oh, yeah.
He used those very words on his posting.
Absolutely, he did. You know, there's something else about him. By the way, I love the headline from the Washington Post. Suspected gunman at Trump golf course has quixotic past. Quixotic. Boy, that's a hell of a headline. I'll tell you about his quixotic past.
You know, for them, assassination attempts are a strange type of poetry.
Yeah, exactly. He was raising funds and trying to recruit people to go fight on behalf of the Ukrainian cause. He was interviewed at one point from Romania doing just that. That's a video interview with Newsweek. Apparently, he was interviewed by the New York Times last year for a story about America's, quote, often faltering efforts to provide military aid and support for Ukraine, unquote. And he's bragged about going to Capitol Hill to help push the Ukraine war effort, and he's bragged about actually going over and fighting the Russians. Joe, based on your understanding of our national security apparatus and our intelligence communities, is it possible that this person could have this high a profile, literally going and fighting over there on behalf of and with Ukrainians, without having some interaction with people within our own government, either intelligence personnel or military personnel?
Absolutely not. You're absolutely right, Larry. And in fact, I'm sure a proper investigation will show that he was not only on the radar of U.S. intelligence and U.S. law enforcement, because remember, the things that he was proposing to do, which is recruiting people to go overseas, many of those things are in violation of U.S. law.
Right.
You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to be a privateer. You know, this isn't the 18th century where we use privateers to do things. That was it. Our government discourages what he was doing. Yeah. They've stopped people from going overseas. They have denied the right of former military people to volunteer to go over to Ukraine. They have rejected that as a form of national policy. And yet this guy's promoting it on the internet. And then, of course, the FBI knew who he was ahead of time. So did the Secret Service.
Right.
So did people in military and U.S. intelligence. Now, whether or not we'll ever be able to get them to admit that is another thing. But no, somebody like this who encourages privateering, going overseas to be a mercenary in Ukraine is definitely on the radar of U.S. intelligence.
Yeah, and Joe, there's also some question about, how many members of Congress did he meet with? There was a picture of him. He said he was going up to Congress. Will we get a full picture of this, or do you think there'll be sort of scrubbing? Or, it's sort of like the first assassination. I'm not even over that one. We don't even know the details of the first assassination, and now we have a second one. But do you think that we will get full details about this guy, his involvement with the Democrat Party? I mean, he seems to have had some connections there. Do you think we'll find out?
Not unless Trump wins. If Trump wins and we have a remake of the Justice Department and the FBI and the federal government, we will learn what we need to learn. And if we take the House and the Senate, if we don't, believe me, the Democrats will do everything that they can do to obstruct any legitimate investigation into this.
Joe, I'm going to need you to stick around here because we got a lot more to get to with you. And listen, I've got questions for the last 2 weeks I got to catch up on as well. So Joe diGenova stays with us. Merrick Garland had something to say about how pristine his Justice Department is and how the last thing it would ever be accused of would be politics over there at Merrick Garland's Justice Department. I think that Joe diGenova might have something to say about that. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. First, though, it's 7:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives with Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
That the Justice Department will not be intimidated by these attacks. But it is dangerous and outrageous that you have to endure them. It is dangerous to target and intimidate individual employees of this department solely for doing their jobs. And it is outrageous that you have to face these unfounded attacks because you are doing what is right and upholding the rule of law. You deserve better. You deserve gratitude.
Gratitude. Joe, it is just astonishing that you have Merrick Garland up there, very powerful man, very powerful agency, actually basically sending a warning to the American public that you shouldn't criticize the DOJ. Have you ever seen anything like this?
I thought I was listening to either King George or Jim Jones at Jonestown, Guyana in 1978 giving the Kool-Aid speech.
Right.
What arrogance.
Yes.
What gall. What incredible gall. Listen, after what he's done to the former president of the United States, after what they've done to Peter Navarro and people like that, a misdemeanor, they put him in shackles at National Airport, poor Peter Navarro. Listen, he doesn't want criticism. Listen to this. We fought a revolutionary war over the ability to criticize
That's
our
right.
government. Last time I looked, the Department of Justice is part of that government. Listen, Robert Jackson, the greatest attorney general in the history of this country, whom Garland was quoting in that speech. You know what Robert Jackson said in that famous speech? He said, "Don't target people. Don't pick out somebody to investigate." That is exactly what Garland has done. Garland is a disgrace. He is an impeachable offense walking around in charge of the most powerful domestic agency in the United States. What he has done to federal law enforcement is weaponized it against not only the President of the United States, but Republicans and conservatives and parents at school boards. Remember, he is singularly responsible for the assault on people going to school board meetings and calling them domestic terrorists. He and Christopher Wray, the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. Can you imagine? They planted evidence at Mar-a-Lago. They took with them to the search warrant scene covers showing classified documents and added those covers to the documents that they found at the scene. They staged a photograph to make it look like that's the way they found the documents. Listen, when all of this is said and done, there is only one person responsible for the problems that the DOJ is having in the loss of faith and trust. It's Merrick Garland. He is disgusting heir to the legacy of Robert Jackson.
Well,
he doesn't want public criticism. My God, what kind of, you know what? I criticize right now on this show Merrick Garland, Christopher Wray, Chris Monaco, the Deputy Attorney General, Andrew Weissman, one of the most unprofessional prosecutors in history, Jack Smith, unprofessional, and the one you never hear the name of, J.P. Cooney, the deputy in charge of the Public Integrity Section, who was criticized in a scathing Inspector General report for politicizing the department and using language and intimidation in political cases. The Attorney General should be ashamed of himself. I say name the career people, name them regularly, and name them often.
Joe, and let me follow up quickly on that because I also want to get to another aspect, the Fulton County case where 2 charges have been dismissed from Donald Trump. You wouldn't know it from the media. But I heard these remarks from Merrick Garland, and I immediately thought, oh, they're already planning the defensive maneuvers against Donald Trump should he win the election. Donald Trump has said, I'm going to go in there and we're going to clean house. We're going to fire these people. And this is him. They're already beginning the entrenchment of the career prosecutors, career investigators. It is going to be like World War III in this town when Donald Trump comes in and literally does what he promised to do.
That's exactly right. They're using various civil servant tools to take political appointees and make them career people. But the new president, if it's Donald Trump, will not be without authority to deal with that. What he needs to do is surround himself with knowledgeable, savvy people who know how to wield a scalpel and who know how to take these things. What I would do is, as I've said, you can either put Vivek Ramaswamy in charge of OMB or the Office of Personnel Management. You need somebody like that who's a corporate maven to come in and run the show, and he needs to surround himself with knowledgeable people. I volunteer to be on the DOJ transition team. I would love to be able to help. I would love to be able to help the new president, if it's Donald Trump, redo the Department of Justice, and not redo it in a bad way, but make it what Robert Jackson wanted it to be. I worked for Ed Levy, one of the greatest attorney generals of our time, and he was from the University of Chicago, a really decent, honorable man. That's what we need back in the department. And this disappointed office seeker, Merrick Garland, who has never forgotten that he didn't get on the Supreme Court, the very, very reason he didn't get on the Supreme Court is what you have witnessed from him as Attorney General of the United States. Thank God Mitch McConnell blocked him from getting on the Supreme Court. Can you imagine what he would be like now?
Absolutely. Joe, we've only got a minute left here, but I would love for you to reflect on these 2 criminal counts in the RICO case brought against Donald Trump and many of his advisors down in Fulton County. You predicted this. You said she doesn't have the authority. Fani Willis doesn't have the authority. Why did it take the judge so long to reach that conclusion?
Oh, everybody's asleep at the wheel, but finally Scott McAfee, the judge, got renominated. He'll be on the ballot now. He had a challenge in the primary. He's been emboldened to act like a real judge ever since he won the primary. This is first grade law school stuff. Neither Bragg nor Fani Willis had the authority to indict federal crimes under the guise of state law. And that's exactly what he found. This is a no-brainer. This is the lawfare. This is what Merrick Garland thinks should be happening to all former presidents.
That's right.
He wants them to use. By the way, ordinarily, the federal government would intercede in a case like this, the Justice Department, and go to federal court in New York and say, they can't do this. These are crimes that only we have jurisdiction over because they involve the Federal Election Commission. But Merrick Garland didn't do that. He didn't exercise the traditional authority. He is a thug. He's an absolute thug, along with Andrew Weissman, Jack Smith, and J.P. Cooney.
Yep.
People need to start remembering these names, put them on a piece of paper, and when you go into the voting booth, remember Garland and Jack Smith and Andrew Weissman and J.P. Cooney, a lot of career people who are ripping this country apart. Listen, there are a lot of good career people at DOJ, but there are also some very sick, bad ones who need to be removed. And them trying to play tricks with the civil service system is not going to protect the thugs.
Thank you, Joe DeGenova. Well done as always. Great talking with you.
You bet.
It is 7:24.